They think she just walked away and healed. But what they don't see is how she broke in silence, how she stood in front of her mirror, stripped of the love she once gave so freely, asking herself if she was ever truly seen. They don't see how your absence didn't just hurt her, it undressed her soul. And that's where her transformation began. There's a moment that happens in silence, not in a fight, not in a dramatic goodbye, but in that space where your footsteps echo as you leave. She won't scream, she won't run after you, but something inside her begins to unravel. See, when a man leaves, physically, emotionally, or energetically, many women don't just move on, they process, they feel, they reflect, they question, and in that process, they begin to emotionally undress. Yeah, not in front of you, but alone, where no one can see. She takes off the confidence she wore when she believed in your words. She peels off the laughter she once wrapped around your conversations. She loosens the grip on the promises you made. And one by one, she lays bare the layers she built with you. This is not weakness. This is how she heals. This is how she transforms pain into wisdom. Because you weren't just someone she liked. You were someone she envisioned a future with. So your absence doesn't just leave space. It echoes. It echoes through her memories, through her mornings, through the routines that once had your name on them. She remembers the way you spoke to her in your softer moments, the way her body melted in your presence, the way her voice changed when she felt safe with you. That goes deeper than you know. When you walked away, she started to question parts of herself. Was she not enough? Did she say too much? Did she love too hard or not enough? You see, the thing about a woman is she won't always show how deeply your absence hits. She'll get dressed, do her hair, go to work, smile. But beneath that strength, there's a silent undoing, because the ones who feel the most often say the least. But here's the thing, what feels like destruction at first becomes rebirth. She learns to dress herself in new truths. She adorns her soul with self-worth. And one day she realizes she never needed someone to complete her, only to complement her. So yes, your absence hit deep. Not because she couldn't live without you, but because she gave you access to a version of herself few ever get to see. And that's what makes her powerful. That's what makes her unforgettable. That's why walking away doesn't mean she's lost. It means she's remembering who she is. Without the weight of someone who couldn't stay, there's a moment that happens in silence. It's not dramatic. It's not filled with shouting or tears. It's subtle. It's the quiet shift in energy when someone leaves, not just physically, but emotionally. And in that silence, something inside her begins to change. It's not always visible to the outside world. It doesn't show up in her outfit or the way she wears her hair. It begins internally, like a quiet storm that builds in waves. She doesn't run after him. She doesn't beg. She doesn't fall apart in public. But in private, she begins to unravel in ways that words can't capture. It's not about weakness. It's not about desperation. It's about vulnerability and the space she once reserved for him. That space doesn't disappear when he walks away. It opens up, and in that opening, she's left with echoes. Echoes of conversations, shared moments, inside jokes, and the way her body used to relax when he entered the room. She starts to emotionally undress, not in the way most people think. This isn't seductive. It's raw. It's unguarded. It's deeply human. She takes off the shield she wore to protect herself. She removes the confidence she had when she believed she was chosen. She unbuttons the trust she built, piece by piece. And then she's left standing in front of the mirror, not naked, but exposed. She sees herself not just as who she is now, but as who she tried to be for him. The version of her that adapted, softened, compromised, held back, or leaned in too far. And in that space, a flood of questions rise. Was I too much? Was I not enough? Did I love the right way? Did I make it too easy for him to leave? She doesn't always talk about this part, because the world expects women to be strong, to bounce back, to glow up. But the emotional undressing, that's not for the world to see. It's quiet. It's done at night when no one's watching. It's done through text she types but never sends, through memories she tries to push away but finds on repeat in her mind, through the perfume she avoids wearing because it reminds her of the time he kissed her neck and said he'd never leave. And as she emotionally strips down, she's not falling apart. She's facing herself. She's shedding the pieces that no longer belong. She's peeling back the assumptions, the fantasies, the hopes. She's looking straight at the truth, not the one she imagined, but the one that remains when he's no longer there. There is something deeply sacred about a woman in this state, a woman who is no longer hiding from her pain, a woman who is willing to sit with her wounds instead of covering them, a woman who no longer needs to perform strength but chooses to feel instead. That is where the transformation begins. Not in the rebound, not in the revenge, not in the distraction, but in the stillness. In that moment where she decides to stop asking why he left and begins asking why she stayed, why she gave so much, why she ignored the red flags, why she convinced herself it was love when it was only attention. That reflection isn't easy. It's confronting. It's uncomfortable. But it's honest. And that honesty begins to sew her back together. Not quickly, not perfectly, but deeply. Because while his absence hurt, it also gave her something valuable. It gave her the chance to see her own depth, to feel her own heart, to learn the strength it takes to face emptiness and not run from it. It revealed to her the weight of her own emotional offering, the beauty in how much she's capable of loving, the reality that not everyone is ready to receive a love that real. So she begins to reclaim her layers. Slowly, she picks up her self-worth and puts it back on like armor. She reaches for her voice and wears it with pride. She dresses her soul in clarity and her heart in discernment. And with each step, she becomes more herself than she's ever been. There's a kind of power women carry that's rarely spoken about. It's the power of presence, the silent pull of emotional intimacy, the way her energy fills a room without her needing to say a word. When she gives herself to someone emotionally, she's not giving a surface-level version of herself. She's opening the door to a world most people never get to see. Her presence becomes a safe space. Her voice becomes a comfort. Her touch becomes home. And so when she invests in someone, she's not doing it halfway. She's building a bridge. She's inviting him in. She's letting him see the sides of her she usually protects. Not because she's weak, but because she believes in connection. Because she hopes that vulnerability will be met with presence. Because when a woman loves, she does so in layers, quietly, completely, and often courageously. But here's what most people don't realize. When that presence is taken for granted, or worse, when it's dismissed or walked away from, something shifts. Not just on the outside, but within her very core. She may not say anything. She might not even let him know the damage was done. But in that silence, she's recalibrating. She's withdrawing her warmth. She's evaluating everything she gave. And somewhere deep inside, she's starting to pull back the light she once poured into the connection. Because for her, it was never casual. She doesn't love in halves. She doesn't engage with someone unless she feels a resonance, a reason, a rhythm that speaks to her soul. That's why when he leaves, physically or emotionally, there's a noticeable emptiness. Not just for him, but for her too. In those moments after he's gone, she starts to remember the way she used to feel before she met him, the gold she had, the self-trust she carried, the peace she knew in solitude. It's not that she was dependent on him. It's that she had made space for someone who didn't know how sacred that space really was. And now she sits with that vacancy. She sits with her own silence. And in that stillness, she doesn't just mourn the loss of someone she cared for. She mourns the parts of herself that were temporarily quieted in order to make that relationship work. The dreams she paused, the boundaries she softened, the voice she sometimes silenced to keep the peace. This is where her emotional power begins to reawaken. She starts to realize that just because someone couldn't recognize her depth doesn't mean that depth isn't valuable. She begins to see that her ability to love deeply isn't a flaw. It's a superpower, one that not everyone is prepared for. And as she pulls back the energy she once gave freely, she starts to feel whole again. Not in a rush, not with resentment, but with a quiet, steady rebuilding of her inner foundation. Her absence becomes louder than her presence ever was. Her silence begins to speak volumes. And that's when the real shift happens. Because when a woman takes her power back, not in anger, but in clarity, everything around her changes. She moves differently, speaks with more intention, laughs with more ease, chooses more carefully. Her standards become rooted not in pain, but in truth, not in fear, but in worth. And suddenly the things that used to attract her no longer hold her attention.